So, like he just said, all we do all day, every day is plan, trade, and implement addressable television campaigns. It didn't come easy, and we, like Jamie just said, we didn't hit the nail on the head every single time, and we learned as we went. So I'm going to share with you some lessons that we learned over the last 2.5 years to help you guys get up to speed in the Canadian market. The first thing that we learned is that you really need a dedicated team of specialists to do this. The original plan for Group M was that we were going to train our traditional television buyers how to buy addressable television, and that didn't work. So Mike Bologna, who is my boss and was here last year, probably knows the most about the tech, the data, everything, and how to connect the whole ecosystem. And what happened was he would run into our clients, he would get them excited, everyone would be, yeah, this is great, we want to do it, we want to do it. He would leave the room and nothing would happen. So the tech existed for 5 years, but it never really was treated at scale because there was no one to tell our clients how to do it. So WPP invested in not only the technology and the data, but then they also invested in the people to make it happen. So we're 2.5 years old, and we're right now about 30 people that all we do all day is execute addressable television at the household, at the zone, and then connected television and over-the-top campaigns. So Justin convinced me to introduce this slide the same way that Mike introduced it last year. I asked that nobody tweets this because my mother will slap me. But Mike refers to this slide as the clusterfuck slide. And it represents the TV ecosystem. And this slide is a little bit different than he presented last year because we update it on a quarterly basis as things change because the market is so rapidly changing. If we were looking at a slide about the US TV landscape 5 years ago, we'd be looking at the networks, the MSOs, and a Nielsen logo. And now there are so many different companies that power it. But if you don't have a group of specialists that know how to navigate these channels, you really can't help clients take advantage of the new opportunities that data and tech bring. So like I said, we're a Group M agency. We don't own inventory. We have no affiliation with any inventory. We are purely an agency to help clients navigate the new space. The second column is, represents the content. I think that you hear a lot of people say, or younger people say, I don't watch television. That statement is stupid. It's just the definition of television has changed. Television is no longer a box that sits in your living room. Television can be consumed many different ways. The next column that you look at shows the MSOs. We're going to talk about, obviously, household level addressable today. So in order to execute in the United States a household level addressable test, you need 3 things. One, the first and most important, is you need the subscriber files from the MSOs. That's why they are leading the way with addressable television, because the networks do not have access to the subscriber files. The next thing that you need is you need tech. So I'm going to skip over programmatic since I think that was covered in a couple sessions earlier. But you need technology, and then you need the data to enable it. So like this chart will be updated next week, and then Google will be up there with Freewheel and Black Arrow and NVIDIA and the tech enablers that allow for addressable insertion. And then in order to trade below the demo and reach a brand strategic target, we're working with all these different data sets. So the scale of addressable television is here now. It's been in the United States for a while. Right now, about 1/3 of every US TV household has the ability to insert at the household level. By the end of this year, we anticipate that half of all US TV households will have the ability to insert at the household level. Even when addressable television reaches a 100% scale and you can insert addressably in every single household, addressable television is never going to replace traditional television. If the first time a guy sees an ad for a Mercedes is when he's 40 and can afford it, you haven't built the affinity, you haven't really brought him down the funnel. Addressable television just allows us to use television as a vehicle to increase frequency against high-value households, play lower down the funnel, and what's a big selling point of it too is we finally have the data to show clients that television works. So everyone knew television worked historically. Digital, we have all this data to drive conversions and show clients click-through rates and all these different metrics. In television, it was just TV on, selling more product, TV off, selling less product. Now we have the data to connect it and bring accountability to the medium. Lesson 2. Addressable television isn't right for every single advertiser. We don't always recommend it. You lose credibility if you walk into an advertiser and tell them that addressable is right for every single brand, for every single initiative. So we do have some sort of rules that we go through. The first criteria that we look at is size. If the target is much under 5%, then generally the cost of the data, the cost of the tech, it's not worth it for the operators to execute the campaign, right? Like Jamie just said, it costs money to deploy this, and we want to make sure that everyone's making money and it's a good deal for everybody. When you start to get over 30% and you have a broad target, like if you're talking toothpaste, then generally it's more efficient to buy nationally and absorb the waste because it's more efficient to buy it nationally. If you wanted to refine the target and say, okay, Colgate, if you go after all toothpaste purchasers, it doesn't work, but if you want to go competitive against Crest toothpaste purchasers, then we have a deal. And then we make sure that we make a strategic choice on the target. The next thing that we look at is we want to find data. We're using data for two ways. One for targeting, and then the next for measurement. So, the first thing you ask a client who they want to reach, they're going to tell you they want to reach adults 18 to 49. And then you sort of have to pull out of them, like, no, who do you really want to reach? Because they're trained that in television you go broad and in digital you go finite. So it's sort of, you have that conversation and tell them what's possible and then get them through that. The next thing is measurement. So on the back end of an addressable campaign, the first thing that you get is media delivery. So when you launch a campaign and you're ready to go to market, the first thing a client's going to ask you for is a schedule. A schedule doesn't exist in addressable television because you don't know when and where the spots are going to run. In addition to that measurement, we make sure that we have secondary measurement, whether it's a sales lift analysis or a brand health study. Then we always go through an economic exercise to make sure it's an economically sound thing for the client to do. So basically, to reach people that are in market to reach a luxury vehicle, nationally it's costing you $10. If you strip out all the waste, it's really costing you $100. We can go to market with addressable for $50, therefore it makes sense. And then right now, the only unit that we can do at scale is 30s. The MVPDs are starting to introduce 60s, and that will open up the pharma category. This is just to give you an idea of some targets across different advertisers. Auto is a huge category because we're able to go state by state and find DMV data. So if we were in the United States, I know what every car everyone's driving in this audience. I know when your lease is coming up, and we could send you a message within that 6-month period. And then on the back end say, okay, this household saw the ad, and here's how many cars we sold. Same thing with soup purchase. American Express is an example that we talk about a lot. But it gets you thinking about the types of targets that we're executing against. So with them, we use their first-party data to suppress, and then we go after non-American Express cardholders that make over $250,000 and have a credit score of 750 above, and send messages only to those households. Lesson 3, results drive revenue. That's exciting for everybody. So this gives you a look at our numbers and the categories that are doing the best for us. So year 1 was sort of the year of the test. So everyone would do a campaign with 1 or 2 MVPDs. The average spend was around $500,000. We executed about 50 campaigns. Year 1, just to give you guys a little glimpse under the hood of Modi, Modi was me and Mike and one other person in the first year. Year 2, we executed about 80 campaigns, and the spend went up to about $900,000 because we got the advertisers not to do a test on 1 and 2 providers, but to do it across all. And these spends are average 6-week costs, just to give you an idea. 2016, we've already executed about 50 campaigns, and we have the average spend on an advertiser about $1.3 million. So we're getting it to be not something that they're testing and trying, but something that's a line item on their flow charts. And then the categories, auto, finance, and entertainment make up 50% of our business. Lesson 4, this stuff works. If Mike was here, he'd say this shit works, but he's not. So here are a couple of case studies. So the first category that we started with was entertainment. The reason why we started with entertainment is because the MVPDs had the data, and we didn't have to go to a third-party source. So for all these campaigns, we're targeting viewers of specific shows. The way that we do it, the methodology is different across the providers. Cablevision obviously has census-level data, so we're targeting actual viewers. With Dish, we go after actual viewers, and then we build a model so we can go after like households. For this campaign, it was for cable news, so we looked for existing viewers of the show, then we looked for light viewers of the show, and then we were able to layer on Experian data to get a political affiliation. On the back end of the campaign, we're able to show test versus control, so everything, each viewer have the same propensity to tune in before the campaign, and we are measuring the incremental frequency of the addressable campaign, and we're able to very granularly show them all this data. So each of the different segments, like you can break it out and look at the conversion rates that way. We're able to show them which show had the highest conversion rate. So households that were exposed to this ad in Anderson Cooper were more likely to tune in versus if they saw it on The Daily Show. We're able to show them media effectiveness, so what networks, day parts, programs work the hardest to drive conversion. This is showing that Monday through Tuesday had the highest conversion rate. So then when they went to optimize schedules for future campaigns, we can take this data and then optimize the campaigns. So it's still television, so you're not optimizing in real time, but there's a lot of data that we can use to make future campaigns work harder. Cat litter. So the targeting for cat litter, you obviously don't want to speak to your existing customers because unless everyone becomes a cat lady, like there's no way to bring in incremental, no, they're not going to buy more cat litter. So we targeted competitive brands. This was a campaign that we ran with Dish, and 2.4 million of their households were cat litter purchasers. And you can see that we saw sales increased. Why did they increase? Because we increased the brand penetration, and the actual return on ad spend was every dollar they spent, they made $1.61. This is another CPG example. I'll just go to the results to show you. But here you can see how granular we get. We actually get a share shift analysis to show them not only were we able to drive the penetration, but which of the competitive brands are most likely to convert. And then we can then take that data to optimize future targets. Auto, we do a lot of work with. This is showing by vehicle type those households that are in market to drive specific vehicles. So against the addressable TV households, those 42 million households, we had 7.6 million households fit the criteria. We sent the messages only to those households, and then we're able to show return on ad spend to the incremental addressable campaign. So against the total exposed households, we sold 3,200 cars. But if you look at test versus control and look at the buy rates, you're able to strip out the value of the addressable to 500 cars. And then based on MSRP, that was a $16 million return on ad spend. And that's all I got.
So entertainment, and I think this might be important for the room, entertainment is a very large category of your addressable spend. Now, is that transactional entertainment, tune-in? Can you help break that down? Because as content programmers here in Canada, they may find this
so
fascinating.
The majority of it is tune-in because you have the data, right? So you have the exposure data, so you know if a household tuned in. We also do work with the movie studios. We do work with the video on demand business as well. So the majority of the spend would be against tune-in. Then the studios are starting to dabble. With the studios, you can't get that closed loop. With the studios, it's a brand health study, more like intent to go to the theater. And then the VOD stuff, we can get the transactional stuff again.
That's great. So are you backing out? Are you doing the same sort of analytics work you do for automotive to say this is how many people would usually have tuned and this is the incremental
yeah, and now we're
tune-in?
starting to work more closely with the analytics teams within the networks and get the cost per converted viewer and then figure out the metrics. We're also adding in different metrics. Like the programmers from NBC told us that it's more valuable, less value to look at a conversion, more valuable to increase time spent. So now the new metric we're going to look at is test versus control. Did we get exposed households to stay longer once they tuned in?
Okay, sort of like we saw from Jamie that with addressable ads, people stay on things longer. So you're actually moving consumers to new programming, and potentially if you're also delivering addressable ads there, they're staying longer there.
Right, and then we're also able to show them that even post-campaign, you can keep those viewers. So we do the measurement 4 weeks after the campaign and show that you can keep the viewers after.
So viewer retention is something you're measuring with the networks and the operators?
Yes.
That's fascinating. So would you say that that breakout of categories is, this is the course of categories that when addressability does come to Canada, and there were some recent announcements that it's coming, that these are the categories where the initial investment may come, and what were the first categories you experienced when it was you and Mike and the clusterfuck slide?
The clusterfuck slide, famous. It was definitely entertainment, just because, like I said, like the data's here, and you guys, from what I'm gathering the last couple of days, are a little bit data challenged. So being the data's here, that might be a good place to start. And then, auto, because we had such strong data to go after, and CPG, because it's easier to use third-party data than first-party data. Obviously, first-party data is the holy grail, but it's easier to go to a client and tell them, you're able to do this with third-party data versus having them track down the way to get the first-party data internally.
CPG seem somewhat small, and the categories that you're in other than entertainment, those are at least automotive and financial are both long considered purchases. Mm-hmm. So can you help us understand where addressability comes in? And you mentioned it, and I appreciate it as a former agency guy, understanding that building brand takes decades and activation happens over another period of time. But those are long considered purchase categories. How does addressability work with all the other activity that those brands are doing in those categories to get a new customer, which has very high lifetime value?
Can you repeat the question?
It's 9 questions, but let me ask.
It's like a lot.
So addressability, these are something that takes a long time. You may have somebody in market for a car in 90 days to their lease expiration. But where do you see the ability to deliver an addressed ad in that whole journey that automotive and finance?
It's allowing television to play in a different role. So we thought television was awareness. Now we have the data to prove we can use television further down the funnel. And, it would be the holy grail to have a different creative message, for addressable based on the segments. But to be honest, a lot of advertisers in the US, they plan on doing that, they can't execute it, and we've seen just used purely as a means to heavy up frequency against high value households, it does convert.
So you don't need specialized creative?
If you have it, great, but you don't need it.
Wow, that's an important thing to know, so that additional investment. Are there questions from the audience? Because this is great, I have one here.
Does Modi charge a higher fee than?
Yes.
Okay.
So in the U.S., there's different models of how you do this. Some agencies do it, undisclosed. Modi chose to keep everything sort of disclosed. So we charge a higher fee. Our fee, being transparent with you all, is between 8 and 15% of the net spend. And clients pay that because they see the value that we bring. And it's sort of positioned like this is the early days of digital, and while it looks really neat and we wrap it up in a bow and give it to the client, it's really executionally challenging to get a campaign up and get everything out of it for the advertiser.
Is that enough from the normal UM campaign?
So you're spending $1 million, I'm going to charge you 8%, between 8 and 15% on top of that.
Excellent. I think we have a question over there.
Jamie, how are you connecting the dots on the auto sales to prove that the 500 incremental cars that are sold are connected to the call to action that's in that addressable ad?
So I work with my friend Adam at Dish and all the MVPDs, and we work with a company like Experian. So Adam has the exposure data is sent to Experian. Experian has the auto data. It's then matched in a privacy compliant way. And because we do everything test versus control, we can look at the buy rates test versus control and tease out what we can attribute directly to the addressable campaign.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm willing to call it a draw between the Jamies. I think they were both excellent. Please thank them.